Welcome to Resiliency Matters. Today we are speaking with Kathy Good, Director of the Chris and Suzy DeWolf Caregiver Innovation Center and Worldmaker's 2024 recipient of our Community Weaver Award. Welcome and thank you and congratulations, Kathy.
Well, thank you. It's my honor to be here and humbled to receive this award. So thank you.
I'm excited to show the viewers why you are so worthy of it. You came to this field of caregiving really through both professional and personal experience, but I wondered if you would share some of your experience with your husband, Dave.
Sure, I'm happy to. So on June 23rd, 2003, Dave was diagnosed with the visual variant of Alzheimer's. And at that point, he became obviously a person living with dementia. And at that same moment, I became his caregiver. So it was a pretty life-changing day. Dave was 56 at the time. He was a judge. He never drove again. And so for him, it was certainly ended his career. I mean, he was still on medical leave for a while before he really retired and took retirement, but that was life-changing for him. And obviously for me, kind of being dropped into that role as his caregiver and not being for sure knowing what that meant. We made a decision that day, or I guess probably in conversations after that day, that we would continue to focus on all of the things that still worked, because there were a whole lot of things that still worked. And so Dave, well, he couldn't drive. He was a cyclist, so he got on his bike and he rode year round. And he continued to run. In fact, during the course of after he was diagnosed, he ran 2 half marathons with his niece, who was a German professor at Baylor in Waco, Texas. So we went to Texas. He did that. He would have, he volunteered at the library. He was asked to join the Harmony Hawks barbershop chorus, which he did. He would have lunch with his fellow judges and have breakfast with his former law partners. So he had a very active life. And so for me, I was I'd had social work experience for decades in the community. So basically what I did is I went to work and figured out like what were our needs and where were there resources in the community and how did you access them and how did you fill out all of their paperwork, and then how did you run your committee. So I ran this committee that gave us, I think both Dave and I, the highest quality of life that we could have, given that he was now living with dementia and I was his spousal caregiver.
Excellent. That focus on strengths, I see it run through the center, but it really came and runs through you as a person and you and Dave as a couple. Talk about why that's so important, because I think there is this cultural stigma or belief that, once you have a dementia, certainly, or certain types of chronic illnesses, that you have nothing to contribute, you don't have a quality of life, you don't experience any more joy. Talk a bit about why that's so important to you, that strength-based approach runs through the center.
Well, I suppose both Dave and I were always optimists, and we were kind of soulmates. And so trying to figure out how do we deal with this life-changing thing that has just happened to us. And so figuring out, well, he wasn't any different the day that he was diagnosed than the day he was before. Now, we both were smart enough to know that this was a kind of condition that would get worse and that was terminal, progressive and terminal. But we wanted to keep on living because we had a lot of living to do. And so the focus was really on the living. And I think that that's really important because if you see this as a diagnosis as the end, okay, somebody that's diagnosed with dementia like Dave, I mean, he lived 12 years after diagnosis. So he had a long time to live and live well. We continued to travel nationally, internationally. As I said, he was continued to ran marathons. We just continued to be active because he could. Okay, now it meant that we had to accommodate to things that of course didn't work, but that was okay. We could sort of figure that out. And obviously sometimes, I mean, I became the driver because he wasn't driving, but you know, I think it kept him healthier. So the prognosis when he was diagnosed was 8 to 10 years. He lived 12 years. And I would like to think that it's because we figured out ways that he could remain active and have support, and me too. And that he lived well for those years. It wasn't like he lived in a bad way. Up until, you know, close to the end of his life, he was still enjoying music. We had a music therapist. So I think that we have to change people's perspective about the fact that your life is over. It's a change, clearly a change, but then all kinds of change happens to us and we have choice. We don't have choice over what happens, but we do have choice over how we handle it.
Yeah, such a powerful point on choice, and brings up two things for me, Kathy. One is when you focus on those strengths and you focus on what is working right, it generates energy so that you have
Yes.
more energy to fix what isn't or to deal with that. So that comes up strongly. And then I think it's such a beautiful highlight of a difference. You know, Dave didn't have a cure available to him, but there was healing available, right,
Yes,
to him
exactly.
individually and to you as a couple. And I think people just kind of put those in the same box, and I've experienced those as very different things, that you might not have a medical cure, but that healing is available in that journey.
Yes,
Right.
for sure.
So bring us to the Innovation Center. How did this come to be?
Well, in 2014, Tim Charles saw a family caregiver center out in on the East Coast. And he was fascinated by that because at the time he was concerned, remains concerned, and Tim Charles was the president and CEO of Mercy at the time. He's since retired, but he saw this center and he was concerned about the number of people that were going to be diagnosed with dementia and felt like the medical community was not prepared to sort of deal with that. And so he thought, wow, if we had a caregiver center, then at least we could support caregivers who were caring for people with dementia and other caregivers too. And so he knew that this was in 2014. He knew some things about me. One is that I was a caregiver for Dave. He watched us because his wife Janice and I were on the local Alzheimer's board together. So he'd seen us. He knew that I was retired because I retired from my clinical practice at the end of 2013. So when he talked with me in 2014 about the possibility of helping the hospital explore this possibility of starting a caregiver center here, he knew, I think he thought I had time on my hands. And the other thing is by this time, Dave had come to live at Hallmar, which was a care center within Mercy. And I thought they had bad art. And the hospital has beautiful art. And so basically I sort of said there needed to be better art, and the hospital said they didn't have money. And I said, that's okay, I'll take it on as a volunteer project. So I raised money, and then the hospital decided maybe they had some money. So we put all this beautiful art on the walls of the 2 floors of Hallmark. So I think he thought I could also maybe do something from nothing. So he asked if I would have any possibility, any willingness to help them deal with this possibility of a caregiver center. And I immediately said yes, because when I was looking for all of these resources and putting these resources all together for us and running my committee, I used to try and figure out what in the world would people do who didn't have decades of social work experience to be able to figure out what to do. And so when he said a caregiver center, I went like, whoa, there is the answer to my question, because we can help caregivers define their needs, get connected with resources. We can provide them emotional support. And we were fortunate because we had some financial resources. And I used to think, what do people do that don't have financial resources? So I thought, if they don't have if caregivers don't have any money, well, we'll figure it out. So that's really how it all started back in 2014. We opened the Caregiver Center in December of 2015. The success of that center then led to the development of the DeWolf Family Innovation Center for Aging and Dementia, which has just been a further extension. And added then other components that together hopefully provide more seamless care for caregivers, as well as people living with chronic conditions, including and specifically dementia.
So I've been to the Innovation Center. You mentioned art, and it really is a beautifully designed and welcoming and colorful place. And there's views of the nature and walking trails. Why is that important? And certainly to people with dementia, but to caregivers as well.
Well, I think that art is one of the design features that was really important, because the Innovation Center used to be the Echo Hill Presbyterian Church. And so we redesigned it, and very intentionally, we made sure that all of the design elements, the lighting, the hard flooring, the carpeting, the art, the furniture, the colors, were all dementia and age friendly, because it can all be very aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't have to be ugly, because it is dementia and age friendly. And what we know is that the environment in which people operate, particularly people that have dementia or who are aging as older adults, it makes a difference in how well they live, what they can see, the ease with which they move around, the fact that the lighting, you try and have it so there are no shadows that are more difficult for people living with dementia or older adults. So and the art at the center, you'll see that it's all almost 100% representational in nature, because people with dementia or older adults want to see, when they look at it, they want to know what they're seeing. So it is all recognizable art. Abstract art is awesome, but people with dementia and often older adults find that disconcerting, because they can't identify what it is. And that's they already have some issues with that, especially people living with dementia.
So from the beginning, you have really married the research, right? There's research to know what can serve aging populations, people with dementia, with the practices and the applied.
Yes, and we consider the Innovation Center kind of like a living classroom, because if you come here, as you did, what you'll see is not just the design elements functionally operating there, but we've put plaques all around the center so that you can understand why. What is it about color? What is it about the furniture? What is it about the lighting and the flooring and the sound and all that makes it age and dementia friendly? Because as we all age, and as we know there are more and more people living with dementia, design elements, because if you're going to change something in your house, maybe you might want to make it age or dementia friendly. Or maybe if you're looking for a senior living community, you want to see how have they done in terms of making those design elements friendly for older adults.
Yeah, it really is eye-opening when you visit the center and see those things. So thank you, Kathy, and more with our community weaver, Honoree, when we come back. Stay tuned.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All Mediacom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your Mediacom account. Not a Mediacom cable subscriber? Mediacom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Welcome back to Resiliency Matters. We are speaking with Kathy Good. And Kathy, you are the recipient of this year's Community Weaver Award. And I want to read, what this award means to us. It's presented to a community collaborator who's deepening social trust by celebrating inclusion and cultivating a sense of belonging and mattering for all. So congratulations. And I really want to hear more about your passion for that sense of mattering and belonging for everyone.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about that is that what we know about caregivers, long-term caregivers, is that they often feel alone and overwhelmed. And so one of the things that's been important to me from the beginning with the Family Caregiver Center and continuing here at the DeWolf Innovation Center is to make sure that caregivers have a sense that when they walk into the building that they belong here. Okay. And part of that is that I want it to be aesthetically pleasing. Our signature is homemade cookies. We have bakers who make homemade cookies. So we want this and the colors that we've used all to be very welcoming so that they feel included. And then obviously figuring out what their needs are and meeting their needs, and then offering opportunities for people to be together in groups, because that's how then you meet other people who are in like situations and you feel much less alone and more like you belong and somebody gets it. Like they talk caregiver, we talk caregiver here. And then I think about our volunteers and how important it is that we match volunteers with jobs that provide meaning and purpose in their lives so that then they feel a sense of belonging here and know that they're having impact in a way that makes a difference to them. And then I think about the same is true for staff. So it's always been important to me to make people feel included and make this a place of inclusion, not exclusion, and be welcoming in all that we do there. So I don't know that if that sort of reinforces what you have seen, but those are the thoughts that come to my mind about that meaning and purpose and what matters. And
yes, I certainly have seen it, and it comes through from when you step in the door at the center. So talk a bit more about your core services. You're doing a lot. It's always evolving.
Yes. So I'll just tell you the components that are, quickly tell you the components at the Innovation Center, and then I'll tell you more about the services that are particularly offered through the Family Caregiver Center, because that's really core of what we do. So the Innovation Center houses the Mercy Center for Memory Health, where you can go and have an assessment about your concerns, about any concerns you have about changing memory. And then we do have the Family Caregiver Center. We also have a community connections program. And one of the things that's going on as we're taping this and as we're talking is that our Connections Club is meeting in the social hall, the small hall. It is intended for people who are living with early stage dementia. It is volunteer supported, and it gives then a break to the caregiver while the person is here experiencing engaging activities. And then we have an age and dementia friendly smart showroom and kiosks that are filled with products and information and assistive technology to help people be able to age in place in their own homes. So the Family Caregiver Center offers a whole proliferation of services, starting with one-on-one visits for any caregiver who wants to come and talk about what their needs are. We'll listen to them, help them identify them, connect them with community resources, provide them emotional support. We have support groups specifically for men, specifically for women, and on Wednesday afternoon, one for both genders. We have an innovation series that is a discussion and educational session on topics of interest to caregivers, 10 great challenges of caregiving, spirituality, life after caregiving, adult children, communication, all of the topics that have really come from listening to caregivers talk about what their needs are and then supplying those. We have a monthly newsletter that also includes an event calendar for the month that shows you what it is that you can attend here at the center. And we have a resource lending library, and we have the Together in Song course. I could just go on. So there's all kinds of services that are available here. And so for any caregiver who's watching, you just need to call us or go online and find out what we do, and we're open to providing services to you.
Great. And we'll put out that contact information.
Thank you.
Yes. So our interests have long overlapped with caregiver resilience. And I think this is a great example of how you do listen and you tap some experts while talking to the caregivers themselves. But you have this emerging interest in caregivers for veterans.
Yes.
Talk a bit about this exploratory stage that you're in.
We had Rajiv Ramchan, who made a site visit here at the center, and he is working on research for the Elizabeth Dole Foundation about caregiving for veterans, either caregivers who are veterans or caregivers who are caring for veterans, either one. And as a result of his visit, it occurred to me that we'd never really thought about this population particularly, and what specifically might their needs be. And in working with you, you made me way more aware that we need to understand some of the culture about veterans, which we'll work on. And then we are going to host this event with you for the evening of November 21st, so that we can take a look at better what are their needs, and how is it that we could go about creating programs here, either in connection with you and your Thrive program, or in other kinds of ways. So we're always asking caregivers about what they need. And this was we just never asked specifically. Like, we knew they were veterans because we've always had a Q&A session connected with our veterans office here locally, so that people can learn more about their benefits, but it never occurred that their needs might be different. So it was just eye-opening, and is one more illustration about how we keep asking questions and also partnering with resources that already exist to provide more services to caregivers.
Worldmaker is very pleased to be partnering with you on that, and we have similar ways of operating, right? So you provide a lot of that caregiver expertise to bring into our work and alongside us as well. So we appreciate that. I want to make sure we get to your book, and I'll also ask producers to put a copy up with better art. I was going to hold up my copy, but we can put that on screen. Yeah. But you wrote this beautiful book, My World War A Bow Tie, about this mix of your personal journey with Dave as a couple, you as a caregiver, and then bringing in what you've learned and you teach it out. But tell us a bit more about your book.
Well, it is, I always say to people, it's part memoirish. So it talks about Dave Good's life before he was diagnosed with dementia, as well as how he lived well after he was diagnosed, and my life before I became his caregiver and my life afterwards. So it's memoirish about me. And then it chronicles by year all of the steps that we took to create the Family Caregiver Center initially and keep it growing, and all of the things that we added, and then how that led then to the development of the DeWolf Innovation Center. So it is it took about 18 months to write, and Tim Charles said, write a book. And so I went like, write a book. So I'll have to say it was very cathartic. I think it helped me process more of my grief over the fact that Dave lived with dementia, died with dementia. And so it was a good process for me, and I'm hoping it's helpful to other people too.
It really is. And like your center, it has that, it's a beautifully designed book.
Thank you.
It's a happy book.
I'll have to give Steve Erickson some credit for that, because he's one of our volunteers, and he did all of the layout and the design of that book as a volunteer. So we have amazing volunteers. So
Yeah, and I want to talk more about that. So that book not only is memoir, but it's really a handbook. So if we have listeners who are interested in even, especially a caregiver center, but even that innovation process of how do you go from an idea to a reality, it's a bit of a handbook for that. So there's a lot there. But you do have this strong volunteer program. Talk a bit more. You talked about meeting their needs and giving them a sense of being included and that they matter. But talk a bit more about either your training, your recruitment, or how you operate your volunteer program.
when we started, we had one employee. So we had to rely on volunteers because there was really no money and no way to bill for the services and that sort of thing. And so we started recruiting everybody we knew, and the best volunteers were people who knew people and said, I think I'm going to talk to so-and-so. And so we got the benefit of, we had a great volunteer who knew other friends who became volunteers. And we believe that many of our volunteers come to our centers with lived experience. Steve Erickson is a great example. So he ran this marketing advertising firm. So he brought to his volunteer experience here all of that. And so he needed some orientation, and his wife also was lived and died with the same kind of dementia as Dave had, which was unusual. So not only lived experience professionally, but lived experience as caregivers. So that adds another dimension here. We've had probably more than 300 volunteers that have been involved since we started, 133 active volunteers, or maybe it's 35 or 40 by now, I don't know, active volunteers who are currently providing all kinds of things, services that have meaning and purpose to them, from baking our cookies, okay, to people who are companions for people who are attending our Connections group. So whole variety, but it's important to make the match so that then the retention is good. We've had awesome retention of volunteers here.
Wonderful, rewarding.
Yeah.
So Kathy, thank you. I just want to say one last thank you and honoring on behalf of Worldmaker for your inclusive and inviting and innovating ways and the place that you've helped create and that you direct. So thank you for this.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk about all of this. I appreciate it.
Great. And thank you, viewers, for joining us on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.